Well, when Dan called me to ask if I would teach the Sunday school class, it's a little intimidating. I normally teach middle school, and I taught middle school for 20
He's like real.
years. But then Dan told me that you guys are all about the same level as me. Hello to the Zoomers. I hope they can hear me well. I see Bob Lewis. We got him right in the middle of the screen where he needs to be, right? Anyway, thank y'all for asking me to be here and talk today. I promise it will not be long. And you guys did draw the short stick today. I just heard Barry saying it's at the class now all the way here. So you guys are just diehard everymaners, so you would be listening to Barry, because I can tell you his is going to be probably much more theologically sound than what mine is. Last week or week and a half ago, probably the most influential person in my life other than my parents died. It was Coach Dick Sheridan, who a lot of you guys know him from coaching at North Carolina State, but I knew him from playing with him down at Furman University. He developed the championship program down there, just a first-class guy. And so I went to his memorial service yesterday in Augusta, Georgia. So left early in the morning, drove down. Saw a lot of my teammates that were there. And, you know, it's just a real tribute to someone that's lived the kind of life like he's had, to have out of my one class, which we, you know, there were probably 30 or 40 of us on the football team in that class together, I guess. We probably had 20 there, which is really says a lot about a guy's life. He was a Christian. He was had a strong faith. I never heard the man cuss. He didn't drink. A lot of stories were shared about it, but anyway, I just thought I would share that with you guys. And also, the Furman people really outnumbered the North Carolina State people. They really did. I mean, I don't know why that happened, but they just did. And he was perhaps one of the best coaches in state's history, other than maybe Lou Holtz. You could say it might be a better one, but he had a great career. Welcome. Hey, good to see you, Randy. My title today is Grace. What will we do without it? And my life has definitely benefited from this grace that sometimes it's very hard for us to understand. Scripture, Romans chapter 3, verses 22 through 24. I'm just going to read this. The righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. There is no difference between Jew and Gentile, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely. All are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. What's that mean to you guys? What's that mean?
For one, he was quite a revolutionary, talking about there's no difference between Jew and Gentile. That was very
Right?
because you had the class structure there.
It was breaking the class structure, right, Randy?
Tearing down the barriers.
Tearing down barriers. Tearing down barriers. Yeah, all of those are true.
And at the same time, he was saying you're saved by grace, not obeying the law so much.
Yeah, and that's another hard thing to wrap your head around, right? You know, and I didn't intend to get on this, but when you said that, my brother, he died 4 years ago, and his sermon or his funeral, I was meeting with the pastor, I didn't really know him. My brother really wasn't involved in the church, and he had a lot of difficult issues in his life, and I was helping my mother and my nephews prepare funerals, and so the pastor kind of made the comment that Chris, he really didn't show a lot of fruits of the Spirit, the way he lived. I kind of hit me the wrong way, and I just said, well, preacher, I'm Presbyterian, and grace is a big thing for us Presbyterians, right? For all of us. I mean, nobody's good enough, right? That's what this says.
Look
So,
at Danny Williams. I mean,
so,
you know.
there you go.
There you go. If y'all only knew.
Presbyterianism is kind of where my roots are. I grew up in Bethpage Methodist Church down in southern part of the county. Actually, that's in Parish County, Indianapolis. But my Sunday school teacher there, when I was in like middle school, kind of relate to that because I've been teaching middle school here for a long time, defined grace as unmerited favor. Unmerited favor. Understand that, what that means. And it's taken me a long time to kind of wrap my hands around it, but you can't earn it, right? Randy said you can't, it's not doing the law, right? So that's earning it. You can't earn it. We don't deserve it. It's a gift that you accept from Jesus with his sacrificial death. That's it. To me, that's the one thing that gives us all hope. Hope in our families, hope for our loved ones, hope for ourselves, hope when we need forgiveness and love from someone else possible in our life. So that's what it means to me. Grace means there is nothing we can do to make God love us more. There's nothing we can do to make God love us less. God already loves us as much as an infinite God possibly can love. I didn't really understand that until I had children. They always, I'm not going to say they always disappoint, but they're always going to do something. Man, I wish you wouldn't have done that. You have to take them to the side and say, yeah, this is really bad. I hate this happens. You know what? There's nothing that's going to change the way I love you, the way your mother loves you. Nothing you're going to do to make us love you more. Nothing you can do to make us love you less. Love you. God's love to me is the same way. Bob Lewis, who's on the Zoom, he's probably going to correct me on a lot of things I said about this, but there was a day that Bob Lewis gave a sermon called "What's So Amazing About Grace." How many of y'all remember that sermon? We're in there for that. Dan? It's one of the best sermons I've ever heard. Very powerful, very impactful. And it's a modern day story of the prodigal son. Except this was a girl who ran away from home at a young age. It's a modern day story of the prodigal son. Sold herself into prostitution for drugs, became addicted. She left a loving family and to live in the streets of Detroit. She was so ashamed, embarrassed, guilt-ridden. She did not think there was any way she could ever go home. This is the story, and Bob's going to correct me, I'm sure, but this is what I remember by it. We didn't have a YouTube at that time that I could go back and watch his sermon again, right? Like we can now. One day she decided she's going to try to go home. She just for whatever reason, she had a longing to get back home. So she called home. And this is back in the time when they had an answering machine still. So she leaves a message, not thinking anyone got it, not thinking her parents would even accept it, right? And what happened when she got in the train and rode home? She arrived at a train station that was decorated for a welcome home party, filled with people that loved her. And her name was Grace. So that is grace. And the amazing thing about grace, it is so hard for us to understand. The prodigal son story, I kind of always struggled with that until Bob kind of gave this sermon, and then I lived out some of my life experiences, which I'll talk about in just a second. But I always struggled with that older brother that stayed home and worked in the fields with his father. You know what? The younger guy, maybe it's because I was an older son too, I don't know. But the younger guy got to go take the inheritance, right? Go live the life he wanted to. And he comes back home, have a party for him. You know, where's the justice? At the times we want justice, but we need mercy, right? His father gives him mercy. I don't know if I'm the only one that struggled with that, but I've thought about that for years of that's why this Presbyterian faith to me is it's right for me. And this church has been a very big part of my life. Grace is shockingly personal. As Henry Nouwen points out, God rejoices. God rejoices, not because of the problems of the world have been solved, not because of all human pain and suffering have come to an end, nor because thousands of people have been converted and now are praising him for goodness. No, God rejoices because one of his children who has been lost has been found. That's grace. That's grace. And the book that Bob's sermon was based on was written by a guy named Philip Yancey. What's so amazing about grace? If you didn't hear Bob's sermon, you might want to read that book. It's a good read, not long. Still on Amazon. But a quote from Philip Yancey says, all of us in the church need grace-healed eyes to see the potential in others for the same grace that God has so lavishly bestowed on us. And I need that probably as much as anybody, because it's so easy to be critical. It's so easy to not look at folks through grace-filled eyes. And that's a challenge for me. Y'all can get the hook at any moment you need to get. Not going to be long. This is going to be a shorter message today.
I think grace is I love what you're saying about it, because I think what God gives us is exactly what we need. And what I hear you say, for the Presbyterian faith has given me exactly what I need. And I think of my path, and I've gone through Methodist, American Baptist, Conservative Baptist, non-denominational. I've gone a long direction to get here, and I love this class because it's all a bunch of men that have gone through a path to get where we are today. And it's all about God's grace to get us where we are because he gave us what we need.
What we need, right? Not necessarily what we want. Right?
How many of us view our faith the same as we did 50 years ago? You're on the journey. Yeah.
It's definitely a journey, right?
Even 10 years ago, we're kind of pissy Paul.
No, that's very, very good point. It is evolving, changing. I want to tell you a little bit of a story about my faith here at First Presbyterian. But Dennis, you said something that made me remember this. And Bob Lewis is probably the reason I joined this church, and I'm so thankful for him. He talked to me and Leslie when we moved back here, and he just had a way about him that he could make you feel comfortable. And at the time we joined, it's not unlike the time now. The church was kind of in a lot of uproar with things going on in the national denomination and what was happening, right? So we sat down with Bob, and I don't know all this controversy, Pastor Lewis. Bob just looked at me and smiled. He said, well, you know what? I just choose to make the fence better, not to close it, make the fence bigger and welcome people. We'll work with it. That's grace, right? That's grace. God gives us what we need. I needed Bob at that time. But I really have learned a lot about grace through my life experiences here at First Presbyterian Church. And some of you know my life experience here, some of you do not. So I'm just going to give you a quick little summary. I promise I'm not going to be long, because yesterday at Coach Sheridan's memorial, I loved it. Loved seeing everybody, but they had an open mic and they let people get up and talk. And they were telling stories, and they said you got 3 minutes, but no one enforced the 3 minutes. And after about 2 hours, it's sitting in the bleachers in Augusta, Georgia, at a football stadium from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock. I told my buddies, I said, we're getting out of here now. So we left. Coach, I think, will forgive us, but we left a little bit early before that thing wrapped up and went to get some lunch. So anyway, I promise I'm not going to do that. Leslie and I joined the church in 1991. I moved back to this area. I'm from this area. It's, it's kind of, I said, well, how did you get back here? I didn't plan to get in the insurance business, which I'm in now. My father was in the insurance business. I didn't want to have anything to do with that business. We got married, moved up to Michigan. I worked for Ford Motor Company. Leslie was working for Delta Airlines, and life was good. We've been up there a couple of years, and we didn't know anyone up there. All our family's from Columbia. My family's from this area. And so we started thinking we want to have a family, and we want to be back closer to home, right? You always want to be closer to home. So I put resumes out. Leslie could live anywhere and work anywhere with Delta, but I had to have a home somewhere and a job. So started putting some feelers out, and this recruiter called me and said, well, we have a job opportunity. I know you're looking at Charlotte, you're looking at Greensboro, we looked at Greenville, we looked at Atlanta. I know you're looking at all these places, but it's not any of those places. It's kind of halfway between Greensboro and Charlotte. I said, what in the world is that? I said, I'm kind of from that area. I know what's there. Well, it's a project accountant job out at manufacturing plant. It was at Herb Southern's. So I'm a project accountant out there for an expansion. And the funny thing is, I was just out there last week, and they demoed a lot of that plant now. And there's other things going in there, which I did not know about. But the line that I was the project accountant on has been demoed. It's no longer even there. So anyway, that got us back to this area. I didn't intend to be in Salisbury, but we came back here. When we started, we weren't really involved in a church up in Michigan. We attended a few, but we just didn't get involved in one, didn't find one that felt right. So we were touring the churches here in the community. Bob Lewis came out to visit, like I said, the rest is history. But our first visit to the church, we met Dottie Metropole, who was the Christian education leader here, and Ames and Jennifer Flynn. And they were members here, and fairly new members too. They recruited me and Les and said, well, we need some people working with the youth. You guys are younger. Maybe you can help with the youth. And I'm like, I just got here. It's kind of this is a little lot right on top of me right now. I'm not sure. So I tried to push it back, and kept kind of creeping in. And so anyway, we joined, became involved in youth, helped with the youth group, which I loved, and all those kids now that we had in youth group, they got children, Spencer Carmichael, saw him the other day. He was one of our kids in our youth group at one time. So anyway, we had our first child, Carly, in 1993. In 96, we were expecting twins, a boy and a girl. And that was my big part of my faith journey was this event. Because Leslie went into early labor about 32 weeks out from 32 weeks into the pregnancy. And so it was on a Thursday night, and she was in a lot of pain. And so I rushed her to the Presbyterian Hospital. That's where her doctors were. That's who was taking care of her. That's where we had the first child. And they took her up to the monitors on the baby monitor, and there's only one heartbeat. And we've got twins, right? Boy and a girl. I'm sitting there and I'm looking at that. Just this awful dread comes over me, and I'm looking at my wife, and she's crying. I'm like, it's a mistake. The girl didn't know how to hook the machine up properly. I said, it's going to be fine. Fine. Just try to find some words, and there's no words. Then hemorrhaging started, and they did an emergency C-section, and my daughter Alexandra was born that night, and John Thomas, our son, died that night. And or it was early the next morning. It was Friday morning, the 22nd. It's Alexandra's birthday, John Thomas's date. So Leslie's struggling to recover. She lost a lot of blood. She had surgery. Didn't know what was going to happen, but what happened in the days following that to me is truly amazing. It's this church and people in the church and what they did. We talked to the pastors at that time, Malcolm Bullock and Bob Lewis. And I never will forget, Bob Lewis came to the hospital and said, there's nothing we can say. There's no words that can help you with this. And he was right. There were no words to heal. But we had decided to have a memorial service because we couldn't come back home. Alexander was going to spend 8 more weeks in the hospital. My wife needed to spend a couple of more days there. We decided to have a memorial service on Sunday. This was on a Friday when this happened. We're going to have it in the Presbyterian Hospital Chapel. And I really thought it would be mainly our family, maybe a couple of close friends. But the number of people that showed up in that church, the chapel was full. It was a full chapel. There were people from this Every Man's Bible class that showed up. You know, we were good friends with people in our Sunday school class, people that had kids, you know, young children like Carly was 3 then. We were fairly close to those folks, but you know, a lot of folks that we'd only been here a couple of years, maybe we were members maybe 4 or 5 years at that point. So didn't know a lot of people in the church, but a lot of the people came out to that memorial, and I never will forget that. You know, I never will forget people coming through that line, and I'm like, it's truly amazing and a sign of, I think, this church living out the grace of God, you know, and loving other people in the church. That was the first thing. Then what came next was nothing short again of amazing grace experience. Alexander would spend 8 weeks in the neonatal intensive care unit at Presbyterian. Leslie, because she had this surgery, she could not drive for a couple of weeks. We also had a 3-year-old daughter at home. So we're in Salisbury. Alexander's in the neonatal unit in Charlotte. The folks in our Sunday school class started arranging transportation for Leslie to get to the hospital in the mornings. Then I would go pick her up after work, bring her home. And then, of course, we had Carly kind of here to there. The Bullocks kind of took care of Carly for a lot of that time. Of course, I had my parents that helped also with some child care. But I mean, arranging transportation, people driving all the way to Charlotte in the mornings, and then they got to turn around and drive back. They drop off Leslie, and then I'll go down and pick her up and leave. That was so helpful. I think people just don't realize how much that Leslie couldn't emotionally drive anyway and be in a car by herself. I mean, physically for a week or so she probably couldn't, but then emotionally she just couldn't. But the type of response the church from our church just cannot be explained. It's an expression of grace, the amazing grace that we sing about, and that Bob preached about much better than I've done today. So the most difficult part of my life was losing a son, but we also had a daughter born that same night, and she's now 27 years old. Alexander lives in Charlotte, doing great. But without this community of faith, I did not know how we'd been able to get through that long loss. It's truly an amazing grace. That's all I got for you guys. If you got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. I'll try to, but that's why this is my church. Anytime things, don't always agree with everything we do or every decision we make, but this is our church. I've had 3 kids baptized here. I've had 1 child that was buried through this church at a funeral, because we had a funeral, by the way, after we had the memorial service, we had a funeral about a week later. Bob did for us, and it was a beautiful service.
John, just probably everybody in this room got a Bob Lewis story similar to what you just shared.
Yeah.
And it still ties us together.
No, it does. Absolutely. It's such a great, people come along in your life. You don't have many people that are real impactful on your life, but you have a few. Bob, Coach Dick Sheridan, for me, was a guy in my life, and a lot of other young men that were at that school at the same time I was there. But you got to remember those people, and then the older I get, the more I kind of remember and think about those people, and how they are impactful. anyway,
John,
thank you.
a lot of youth in this church look at you as one of those impactful people. I just want to give you one example. You spoke at Alan Cook's memorial service, and it was one of the most powerful words of remembrance I've ever heard. I was in the balcony listening to it, and the whole service was fabulous, celebrating his life. But your words were very powerful, and I thank you for that.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. That was, Alan is, that was a hard loss, right? That was a hard one. And taken too early and with a family and just, yeah, so.
Well, I gotta tell you too, Danny, if it wasn't for Danny, I wouldn't be in this class. Of course, we've been friends ever since school, high school. Of course, he goes on to college, and Uncle Sam takes him in. But anyway, we introduced him to his wife, Jan, because Jan was my wife's roommate in college. And you know, the thing was, Nancy and I talked about it. Dan was going on a trip with us to the mountains skiing. Somehow, the girl he was supposed to be taking, I don't know what happened. I don't know if he made her mad or what, but anyway, the best thing ever happened to us.
It was that.
But we've had a good relationship ever since high school. We've got friends that nobody could. I mean, we just been a blessed group at our age, and it's been a good age for us.
Yeah, that's so important though, to have those kind of friends that are with you, you know, through thick and thin, that'll show up. Alan Cook, one of those guys, that's what I talked about at his funeral.
Yeah.
When my brother died, I said this, Alan was the first part. He was at my house. I don't know how you found out, but he was at my house within minutes of me getting the word. I was coaching the First Presbyterian. Now, the Lutherans don't like me too much because we beat the Lutherans a lot in the church league basketball with the high school kids. So we were having a game and my phone was ringing. It was my nephew calling to tell me about my brother. So I get out. I didn't answer the phone in the gym. I get out from the Y, I answer the phone, and then somehow or another, time I drive home, which is 5 minutes, there a few minutes later, Alan shows up at the door. Right? That's the kind of friend he was, right? And kind of, you know, I wouldn't have met Alan Cook if it wouldn't have been through this church, right? I would not have known Alan. We met him here. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.